my glasses on. There she is.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody.
Hello. We
Hello.
have Erin back. So welcome to episode 19,
Wow, we're almost
which
hitting the 20s. Wow.
you were trying to think of the word.
Are you going to
I
stop
don't
right
know what
now?
it is. I don't know what it is either.
Yeah.
No, I don't know what it is. I'm not even gonna pretend.
Decades. No, not right. Go ahead.
No. 20 is what
Yeah.
we're talking. So we are on episode 19, and this one's going to be about therapy. And I just have a few minor things to say before we actually get into talking about therapy. But so, ripped from the headlines, super quick. I sent this article to you. It was in The Guardian on July 29th. And the only thing I want to say from it is one line. So the title is Want to Change the World? Start by changing yourself, however terrifying that may be. And in the first paragraph, this woman says, there's an old adage in therapy, which is people come to treatment because they want change, but they don't necessarily want to change. They want the change to happen
Yeah, they
around
want they
them,
want it to be magic. Yeah, yeah.
but they don't want to be the one who has to facilitate a change,
Yeah.
which I thought was interesting. And I have a therapist. Absolutely. Rachel, love her. And I will say this, and this is what keep some people are not really into therapy because number one, I think they think there's a stigma, whatever. But one thing you have to remember about therapy is that this person is not there or doesn't exist to validate everything you've done in your life that has brought you to them. They're not there to say, oh my gosh, you're completely correct in everything you ever did. And I am here to tell you, you're great. You can walk out the door. That's not their purpose, right? Like they're not there to be your cheerleader. They're not there to condone everything that you've done. What they are there for is the why. And I just said to a friend of mine the other day who was here visiting, a very good friend of mine. I love her. And I said to her, my sister, my oldest sister, who is a social worker and who's been through a lot. And she is, she has been in therapy for years and she's been through a lot. And,
Let's
she
take a
has
sip
a
of wine.
really go for it. She has a really unique take just from her personal experience and also from later in life going to get her master's in social work and becoming a social worker to aid people aid people who are in the situations that she was in. Okay. So she is literally accepting of so much. So I
Sure.
could call her. I could literally call her. And I said this to my friend. I said, I could call my sister and I could say to her, hey, I robbed a bank yesterday or knocked over a liquor store. And she would say to me in her voice, which I think I can do pretty well, she'd go, okay, um, first of all, I love you. Secondly, don't tell mom. But more importantly, Ellen, why did you feel compelled to knock over the liquor store? What was happening within you at that point that you felt the need, to go knock over a liquor store? And I would be like, I don't know. And she's like, we really need to take a look at this. And then we would talk about how I would go on the lam or flee to Canada so I wouldn't get caught or
Yeah.
convicted.
Yeah.
But she always, everything I say to her, no matter what it is, she
Well,
says
I'm
the
gonna.
why, the
So
why.
that's. Wait, I'm looking at you had something else you wanted to say before I interject.
No, I said I was going to stop my interruption problem.
Okay. All right. I'm just going to interject and then because I
It's
want to hand
aware.
this over to Erin.
Just do it.
Um, as a therapist,
Mm-hmm.
um, for very, very long, for a long time, um, I agree with the why. And I don't know if I agree with the you're not the cheerleader. I'm going to cheerlead my people when they're doing the right thing. I am there. I'm right there.
The
Yes.
right thing.
But
Right thing.
it's very clear right away when I have someone, we're not all that different, right? And I think one of the most important gifts of a therapist is to realize, like, no different than childbirth. You're going to tell me a story about childbirth, and somebody else is going to tell me that story, and I'm going to have my own story, and somebody else is going to, but it's your story. So what I mean by that is when people come into my office, the stories aren't all that different, which is a good thing, because then I can deduct and I can deal with all that information. And now I have the skill set to learn how to, you know, for lack of a better example, give birth. I'm a doctor. I know how to give birth. Your experience is going to be different than anybody else's, but I have the information to do it. My job is to make sure that it's individualized, it's personalized, and that I celebrate you, and that I make sure that you have the right information. All right. And the minute I step over that boundary, or the minute I don't give you that, then I'm not doing my job.
Right. So that was another point I was going to make. The therapist who is trained and listen, like anybody who's like, I don't know if I should go to therapy because my story, they're going to be shocked, or they're going to be appalled, or no, they're not. Okay. No, they're not, because they have heard so much.
Actually, that's where I want to interject. I'm gonna lay that out, right? I'm gonna hand that over to Erin, because I know we have had conversations. And Erin, it took you didn't jump right into therapy. That's not something you know, once you chose it, it was a commitment. But I know you had those feelings. So you're like, nobody's gonna understand my journey, right? And so what I'd really like to talk about with you, and what you can share with us, as someone who's gone through that stuff, you know, what therapists didn't work, what makes the one you have now work, and why do you do it, and how do you access the best benefits of therapy as a client?
Thank you for having me back, by the way.
Yay!
That of which nobody requested.
Oh, stop. That's not true. Actually, I have a few people ask when you were coming back.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mom.
A few.
No, she just kept emailing. No, but I actually, funny enough, at your 4th of July party, I had a conversation about this with a few of our friends.
Okay.
We talked about therapy because I was asked some questions about
Mhm.
it. What made a good therapist, in my opinion. And it was a pretty, you know, I thought a pretty good conversation, but I will back up a moment, because technically I have seen a therapist since I've been a child.
Mhm.
I first started going to a therapist because of my parents' divorce. And, you know, not by choice, of course, but I never had a problem talking about my feelings and stuff. So I found it to be somewhat helpful. But at your party, I was asked, well, what makes a good therapist versus what makes a therapist a bad therapist? And I said, okay, well, let me give you some examples of what, in my opinion, makes a therapist a not so good one. When I was 8 or 9 or whatever age I was, my therapist fell asleep while I was talking.
Okay.
So I was talking about, you know, the really tumultuous childhood at the time I was having, and I look over, he's just snooze town. So
Oh, poor baby Erin.
you can imagine, to talk about not feeling heard or feelings being validated. I think that was a real eye-opening experience for me, just getting into the throes of therapy. So I'd say that was,
like, did you
I mean, I was a kid, so no, I just thought
think he was dead? I mean,
and whatever I'm saying does not matter.
Yeah, that was really
wow.
yeah.
So that
That's
was the
amazing.
start of, yeah. So thanks, buddy.
Yeah, he was a winner.
Yeah.
Not specifically name him in case he's still practicing.
Let's hope not. But maybe it was just because the appointments were late and he was tough. I don't know. But either way, so that was
Not how it works.
yeah. As I got older, and so I, you know, I kind of intermittently would go. I have had therapists, sort of, and again, we're talking about being your cheerleader, which is very important, but sort of coddle me. So we would be just a constant listening, and then just telling me how much insight I have, how much self-awareness I have. but then that's where it would end. So
Yeah.
I wasn't really getting any tools or anything. It was pretty much, which again, I'll talk to anybody about anything anytime. So it was still, there was still a relief at some level of me just being able to go somewhere and sort of trauma dump.
Cathartic,
But,
yeah.
you know, but I was just kind of getting that, you know, because I found myself sort of guiding my own therapy in a way.
Yep.
And then I just, yes, wow, you have so much insight and you're right. Yeah. And then I would just get the, you know, the active listening portion, but no tools to work with. So
Yeah.
I had a lot of therapists that did that.
And they didn't challenge you. I remember that too. Nobody would challenge you.
So that's, once I started realizing, as great as it feels as a Leo to be told how wonderful I am, that I'm not really getting anywhere. I'm still making the same mistakes. I'm still doing the same patterns as far as behaviors and chasing the same type of partners. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm not really getting into the depths of why I'm doing the things I'm doing, because I'm just continually being told, yeah, you got real insight into what family history and the shit I went through. Okay, cool. But I need to get into like why, because clearly whatever I'm doing, I can't figure out on my own.
Yeah.
Of how to break that pattern. So
Yeah.
I need to be challenged. I need somebody to be firm but respectful and help me through that. So I remember I had one therapist, it was the first and only time I saw her. And I was so used to that point of giving the whole, okay, family
Oh, no.
history. This is why I'm here. Yeah. And and she goes, I don't know how you get out of bed every morning. And I was like, yeah, no, I don't either. That's why I'm here. What? Like, I'm like, damn, dude. Okay.
Wouldn't it be like a no-no in the manual?
I
Like,
think
you
we
know,
need a
this is what
list
you
of
don't
people
say.
that, yeah, wow.
Yeah,
What
I was
the
like,
hell?
I know, it is tough to get out of bed in the morning, dude. That's why I'm medicated. What? Okay.
I'd be like, I don't know why you're here in the first place if that's what
Yeah.
your response is.
I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, okay, that was because like some of the things I was saying too when we talk about like have a neutral face expression when you're interviewing. She just was like, really? Wow, that happened. Go like I mean, it was like this is our first session. Sorry, that's my puppy.
It was her
Oh,
first day on the
baby.
job.
Yeah,
It
this
was
is
her first day on the
Oh, yeah,
job.
Bobby. You got a
Absolutely.
blurred screen and I need to
Right.
see
I
Bailey really
know,
bad.
I know.
Unblur.
Unblur for me.
Okay, I just
Unblur my heart. Let me see.
okay, hold on.
I have not kissed that
Hi.
face yet. I need to go see the
Hi.
Bobby.
Hi.
Yeah, he's being bad. He's like, you're not paying attention to me. Okay, let's go. Nobody wants to see my coffee station. Okay.
Nobody really cares.
Nobody really cares.
No.
But yeah, so that experience, I was just like, yeah, sure, we'll set up. I'll call you to set up another appointment.
Yeah, right. Running out the
I'll
door.
get back to you. Checks in the mail.
So then you know, sort of fast forward, COVID really was a tough time for me. And I reached out to you, Katie, and I was like, I needed referral and I need somebody good because there was one other person that I saw that was the best therapist that I've ever seen at that point, and he was $250 an hour, did not take insurance. And I mean, I just couldn't do it, you
Yeah.
know, and so and he was like what you see in a movie. I mean, it was an old Elmwood house that you went in one door and came out the other. I don't know who sees him, but it was probably people that, you know, didn't want to be seen. And you
Mhm.
walk in and it was an old leather couch. And he's like, go ahead. And I'd say something and I'd be, you know, and he'd be like, all right, let's talk, let's visit that.
Yeah.
Let's visit that. And I'd be like, yeah, I know, just Bailey. And I'd be like, you know, just my dad's stuff. And I remember taking the squeaky away. I'd be like, just, you know, like stuff with my dad. It was kind of, he's like, okay, well, how does it make you feel? And I'm like, well, just, you know, upset. And he's like, no, we're not doing that. Let's dig deeper.
He was awesome. I remember you telling me about this guy.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, I don't know what you mean by that. And he's like, well, take your time. And I'm sitting there like, I don't know what do you mean. And he's like, think and feel. And I'm like, I don't no, and I'm bawling. And then I'm like, this, I can see why you're $250.
Yeah.
And every single time. And he's one of those
Hell
guys
yeah.
who he just silently slide the tissues over. And I'm like, man, you go through a lot of tissues in this room, don't you? Like, he just knew. He goes, I'm a classical therapist. I go,
Yeah.
he's just old school, man. He just knew what to, he's like,
Yep.
okay, no, I get that. Let's dig a
There's
little
something to be said for some of those evidence-based practice. Even everybody's like, we don't want that kind of structure. Yeah, but then you end up where everybody's like, how you doing? What are you doing? What'd you do this weekend? Okay, cha-ching.
I mean, when I tell you he cut to the core, man, he'd be like, no, I get that. Why don't we dig a little deeper? I'm like, I don't know what you mean. He's like, I think you do.
You're
I'm
like,
like,
wow, you've got a lot of faith in me, man. Okay, let's do this. And then you don't want to
yeah.
disappoint him because he's so cool. So you're like, okay, I'm
Yeah,
gonna
just
do
an
it for
old,
you.
yeah. And when I
For
say it
you,
smelled like
I'm gonna
rich
do it.
mahogany, it was like one of
Yeah.
those like old school. And but he did. He knew how to really. His guiding questions were perfect. You know, he just really knew how to make. And sometimes he knew when to talk, when not to talk. The level of silence was just enough where I'd be like, I gotta sit with this for a second. And then he'd be like, okay, I see that you're emotional about that. You want to talk to me about what's going on? And I'm like, I don't. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so he had this approach that was like that. It was intense. And so I was like, I knew I wanted something similar if somebody that's able to penetrate that, but I can't afford that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I was like, Katie, I need somebody that challenges me. And, you know, you told me, you're like, anyone at Harmonia is good. And so, you know, I started going, you know, there, and they're wonderful. And, unfortunately, side note, my therapist broke up with me.
When did this happen?
Just recently, the end of July. Her husband, and again, I know nothing. This is another side note. If you have a good therapist, you know
Nothing
to
about them.
about them. This is the
No,
first
I
time
know
I found
nothing
out she
about
was
mine.
first time I
Nothing.
found out she was even married, but she called and left me a lovely voicemail and said she was so proud of my progress. But her husband apparently is in grad school, and they moved to Brooklyn. He got into grad school in Brooklyn, and so she moved.
Yeah, but
And
her license is still good in New York. You guys could do something virtually.
I know I don't know. I don't, maybe she's not even doing it. I don't know, you know, but I think she would have offered, I don't know.
Okay, well,
Either way.
Well,
we
if
should
he's in
Um,
grad school, then she's supporting his ass. So I'm sure
I
that
know,
she's
that's
probably still doing some therapy.
but what she was really great at was challenging me, and I would kind of get caught up in I'm trying to convince myself of things, and she's like, I hear what you're saying, Erin, but I'd like to push back for a second. And I'd be like, oh shit, here it comes.
I'm in trouble.
You know, yeah. And but she was so respectful and gentle enough about it. And I'd be like, no, you're right. You are right.
Mhm.
She's because I remember you telling me that one of the things that you wanted to work on was, you know, and I'm like, no, you're right. She's
Yeah.
like, so when I hear you saying, you know, blah, 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 it makes
Yeah.
me think
It
that
sounds
maybe
like this, and yep.
right. And I'm like, no, you're absolutely right.
Well,
you
what
know?
she's doing, the gentle thing that she's doing is holding you accountable for the precedent you set for yourself. And it's just got to be done gently. And I think if I can just interject for a second,
Yeah.
you know, we make it's funny because we make fun of the vernacular that's used with therapists. But when you go to school and they talk to you about this stuff, the problem is so many of these phrases and all these things they're really good phrases, but they have been overused and they've been put in movies and they've been done in this and done. So then when you sit down, you say, so, you know, just to clarify, now it's got a stigma. Everybody's just like, because that's called a clarifying statement because everybody knows now. So to hear your therapist genuinely try to reframe even her own vernacular, because she was she was taught to say certain things. For me, that's always a sign of particularly a younger therapist who's gonna just crush it because they're trying to get to the other side of as therapists, there's so much happening in media and everything. Not that therapists have, well, we do have stigma, but it's like you got to cut through some stuff to get to people, you know? And I like the way she talked to you because she did. Yep.
And you know, And she did it. It was very natural. It was not, it didn't feel, because again, I mean, at one point I did go to school.
You did.
Like I'm aware of all the, I've taken motivational interviewing courses. Like I know the approach. I've also been to therapy enough that I feel so I can kind of know when it's being scripted or not. And everything that she did, was just, I felt heard. I felt like, she was really, she was always prepared for our sessions, and she was like, okay, so I have here, last time we talked, this had happened and blah, blah. She's like, all right, so where are we at? I gotta know, where are we
Yeah.
at? And I'm like, all right, you ready for this? Like, I mean, she was so invested, and like I was saying too at your party, it was like, she helped me with changes in my thought patterns. And I think that for me was something that
there it is right there.
So for me, for example, it's like, I'm, cause I would be like, listen, I'm like, Marissa, you've talked to me now, and I'm still dating I'm still chasing the same type of people. It didn't matter if it was men back then or women now, like I'm still chasing people that ultimately don't love me. And as soon as people start to like me, I freak out, and then I'm like not attracted to them anymore. I'm like, I need to figure out why that is. And she's like, okay, all right, well, let's look into that.
It's such a
So
gift.
why?
Well,
Right?
hold
Like,
on
so
to
why?
that part. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, but it's such
So
a
why?
gift, because Ellen, I was going to ask you too about your therapist. It's such a gift as a therapist. And in the population I work with now, my go-to population for years was pretty dysfunctional families, so family therapy and children, and then some very heavy-based trauma stuff in a residential treatment center, and then working with some pretty psychotic adults. So my stuff was always very crisis-driven, where now I work with people who come in and say, I do this thing and I need it to stop. And I'm like, oh, I have tools for that. They're here buried somewhere because, and it's such a gift when someone comes in, Erin, I can't even tell you, I can only imagine what she felt. Because to be that clear and to come, I guess, I mean, at least for me as a therapist, I'd be like, let's get to it, but that doesn't happen very often. So Ellen, I want to ask you while we're on this topic. So why does Rachel work for you? Rachel, right?
Rachel works for me. So Rachel, so my oldest sister used to work for Harmonia. I don't know if you knew that.
Well, there you go.
So when I was saying to her, we were talking one day, and of course, super close with my family. They know everything. And I said, I've seen two other therapists, but they were, and I don't want to make it sound like I cycle through therapists, but you got to find the right one, right? Like it's like,
you
it's
have
like
to. It's
you got to find the right
speed
one.
dating. Get it over with till it
It
works.
is speed dating. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And my sister said, I really want you to talk to Rachel. She's like, she specializes in DV. And I don't know if I should say this or not. She was like, and because I work there, you can bypass her waiting list.
Oh yeah, I do it all the time. Yeah.
Do it all the time. It's not what you know, it's who you know. So Rachel from the gate, like literally from the gate, was, the first, because we do telehealth. I don't go see Rachel. We do telehealth.
Yeah.
And which is just as effective. If anybody doesn't think it is, it is. And especially after COVID and all that shit. So like when I from the first appointment, when I was like, hey Rachel, like I'm Ellen, whatever. And she was like, and literally she was like, give it to me. Like, just give it to me. And I was like, okay, I'll give it to you. And now, like, when I talk to her, it's so funny because she'll say to me, I love how every once in a while, she calls me Miss Allen. She's like, Miss Allen, you never disappoint. What's going on now?
That's awesome.
I'm like, is that your nice way of saying I'm a fucking mess? But no, she's like, because there's always something. And she's so great because you can sit there, like she usually starts her session with, tell me what's going on.
Yeah.
And so then I'm like, okay, well, this happened, that happened. I'll be completely honest. Obviously, Katie knows. My current biggest stressor is that my youngest son has decided that he and I cannot bond as humans right now. So he has decided not to pull away. He still loves me. He still texts me, that whole thing. But he has chosen to live with his father. And at 17 years of age, it actually doesn't really make that much of a difference in regard to like the custody arrangement and stuff like that, because he's 17. And any court would look at that and go, he's 17, right? Like he's practically 18. It doesn't really matter. But like our last 2 sessions, we talked about that. And she is so good at hitting the nail on the head. Like I'll say, I think it's because of this, and I think it's because of that. She's like, no, no. She's like, I've seen this. I've seen this. She's like, this is what's happening. This is what's happening. But she lets me talk first, and then she takes it all and goes, okay, here's what I think's going on, and tell me if you agree or disagree. And then we talk more. She makes me laugh. And like, but she also doesn't let me say like, oh, well, I kind of like thought this. And she's like, nope, stop. Like she's like, don't get in that line of thinking, don't do this. And then she'll also be like, but also don't do that. Right.
Yep.
Like that's going to lead to this. She is like, no nonsense.
Yeah.
100% no nonsense. Like down to the root, like not telling me what's going to happen or what to do, but being like, Ellen, listen. Okay.
There's the key too. And that's the piece. And I think, and I just want to interject again, because this is making me think about, we could take this whole kind of episode to another level. I am incredibly passionate about what I do. And even in the midst of my own dysfunctional relationships, becoming a therapist and everything, that was the only time I would be able to set limits in my dysfunctional relationships, whether it was romantic or family or something. When it came to the integrity of my work, there was no compromising that. And the fact that, and you brought up 2 things, the fact that you feel like you know this person and they know you so intensely, yet you know nothing about them,
nothing about her.
Yeah. And it's an interesting journey. I wore that like a badge for many, many years, that my people felt so close to me, but didn't know anything about me. And I realized, as I'm going to try decades again, can't half a century there. That's my age. I got it. When I went into this position, which was, well, I was also dealing with people that, needed more care.
Right.
That's not a different kind of care. But it just making me think, because it's interesting. Maybe we can talk about, you guys might have questions about therapists. You've said a few things like, I wonder if she thought that, or what her process was when I said that. And, being one and also working with them, and our responses and our feelings are not all that different in regard to those things. And maybe that's something you guys would like to ask. There might be questions that you have about that.
Well, there are people as well, right? And you actually made a comment way long ago, I think maybe in our first episode
years ago
together, where you said, decades, where you said,
centuries, sorry,
narcissistic therapists are a thing. And I was like, oh, don't tell me that.
I feel like I don't want to hear that. Essentially, I have gotten people's licenses taken away the minute I sniff that.
Good.
Yeah.
It's like,
but anyway, okay, wait, I'm going off on it's me this time. Going off.
No, that's okay. What are you saying? It's me all the time? What the fuck is that?
Well,
I heard it.
That's really funny. Wait.
I'm always really funny.
You just buried me like that. That was awesome.
It's one of my favorite things to do to people.
Okay, so I have to reflect. So this is a question that I didn't know that I was going to ask, but having, this wonderful therapist in your life for quite a few years now, how do you feel about what's your next, because I wasn't expecting to hear that she was moving. So what are your thoughts on next steps? What would you even begin doing?
So I'll be honest, when I heard the voicemail, and Amber was here and I heard this voicemail, and it was very sweet. And because, she was saying about she's enjoyed our journey together and she's so proud of all the progress I've made. And, you know, if I wanted to have one more session, that I could, you know, call her before she leaves. But if not, you know, she understands. And, you know, and also too, you know, she was like, and if the universe brings us back together at some point, you
Yeah.
know, and so she kind of was always on the same, you know, belief
that-
system that I was too, without getting too, you know, because I would kind of explain, like, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual and stuff. And
Yeah.
too, she was always, you know, respecting that. And it seemed like she was kind of
Mhm.
vibing with that too.
Yeah.
So, when I heard that, I literally cried.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
like, she broke up with me. And I literally looked at Amber and I'm like, what am I going to do? Like, what am I going to do? But then I'm like, okay, am I codependent on my therapist in an unhealthy way? I'm like, because
You're like, shit, doing the same thing with my
because it's like she has helped, like, and when I say, I see, I feel like I'm gonna cry.
It's okay.
Oh, you can cry.
She just like saved me. You
I
know what I
know.
mean?
I know.
Oh,
Erin,
Just
you're
was like,
ready.
I was
if
like,
you cry, I'll
I
cry.
know, I'm just like,
Oh.
I was in such a bad place.
Yeah, it was rough.
I was going like every week, and she just like, I don't know. I feel like you can't really just, I don't think you can thank someone enough.
Well, you just did.
I know, but so I know that I'm like so much better. It was 5 years ago. But the thought of like not having that support system, I think, was really scary for me. And I just was like panicking, like, okay, like, what am I going to do now? But then I was like, she gave me all of these wonderful tools. Like, I got this, you know? But at first I was just so scared. Like, I was like, oh my God, like, how am I going to do this on my own? So I never called her back.
It's okay.
And is that right? I didn't call her back on purpose
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I
And she
felt like,
probably completely understands that.
Oh, trust me, she understands. She understands.
yeah, because yeah, because I just felt like, okay, like, I think that chapter is like, you know,
Yeah.
Happens. And you know
so,
what? I want to say something right now. I think it's awesome that you're being super vulnerable. And I get it. And I want to say to anybody who's watching, who's like, oh my God, look at these people crying over therapists.
mm.
We're not the pussies. You're the pussies for not going to therapy. What
No,
we are
I
the
mean,
strong ones who can put it out there and
Yep.
say, this is something I needed. This is
Yep.
someone I connected with. This is someone that helped me. And for the people who are like, I don't need therapy. Therapy's for, jerks and weak people. No, therapy's for the strong people. That's what it's for. The people that don't go are
Yep.
the weak people. So
Erin,
before
let me.
anybody gets a thought in their head, like, oh God, listen to these three, like,
Right.
you know what,
No,
dude, we're so much farther
no,
ahead in the
it's
game than
not
you are.
it's
I'm
the
not, I'm
real.
just being a bitch. I'm just being a bitch
No,
right
you
now
are,
because I
but
don't want
it's
anybody
not
attacking.
and it's not the folks that we talk about that go to therapy. Those folks don't go to therapy because they have to look at stuff. But Erin, I want to tell you this because I think this might put a little bit in perspective. And this is not. So one of my favorite podcasts, as you know, is My Favorite Murder, right?
yes.
And Georgia
Do
had
love the
this
murder ones.
therapist. Hi, do you like it?
Everybody likes the murder podcast, man. Dateline is my all-time favorite
No,
show.
they're hysterical. I mean,
I
it's
like
laughable.
funny murder podcasts. That's
Oh,
good.
they're like they're two women who are best friends and they're hysterical. But
Okay.
anyway, so
I'm looking it up.
Georgia had been seeing the same therapist for probably 10 years, right? And adored her and she got her and it was she used to talk about it all the time and all of a sudden she stopped talking about her therapist. And it took a couple weeks, but Georgia came on and she said her therapist had killed herself. She had committed suicide.
This is real.
And it was legit. And she's like, I can't. And not only could she not imagine her life without her, but she couldn't absorb any of that.
Right.
And it took her, I think it was about a year and a half or something. And she just started kind of fishing, just a little bit. And not only did she get another therapist, but she got someone that understood grief and loss at a level that Georgia never knew that she'd ever need. So the universe just opened up that door even wider. And this is a profound loss, and it breaks my heart for you. But I know you, and I know if you let that door open up, you are the one who's manifested these people in your life.
Mhm.
So you go through the same channels, and that door will open wider. You're ready for something else. You're just ready for something else,
Yeah.
you know? But you got to be sad about it. It's just time to be sad about it.
Yeah, because at first I was like, am I too codependent on my therapist?
Oh my God,
I'm
no.
so
You know,
sad.
so no, but let's
Dump you.
clarify what,
She had
yeah,
to
let's
go
clarify what codependency
change
is.
her life.
Yeah, the clearer definition of codependency, just so you know, is if you're not okay, I'm not okay. I need to be, you know, it's like that was not your relationship with her, you know. Were you emotionally reliant on her? Of course, she was your therapist. So get real clear about codependency. That was not what was happening there. I've seen you do that with people, but that wasn't happening with your therapist. Yeah.
No, and you weren't codependent on her because, like you said, you didn't know anything about her personal life.
You didn't have any, there was nothing there. She did that on purpose. Yeah.
You weren't clinging to anything like, oh my God, but I loved our Margarita Thursdays. Or like, you know, we used to take walks. No, you
Right.
only, so that's not codependency because you actually didn't know anything
Wow. I
personal
actually
about.
think, Ellen, I think you just nailed it. Erin, I think this might be one of the quintessential moments in your life where you have leaned in on someone as hard as you have to recognize it's not codependent. No, for real. I mean, it's
know.
not. Some people in your life, you've gone through the journey of codependence and it's come out the other end. But this one didn't go in that way and it didn't leave that way. And I think you can use that as a model, you know?
Yeah,
It's
it was like,
I mean, you can't be codependent on your gynecologist. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, this one time.
yeah, I know.
don't ruin my point. No, but like, that's what I mean. There was no personal, you talked about a lot of personal stuff, but there was no personal.
No,
That's what I think.
I really want to know how you're gonna make this work. How's the gynecologist got the personal part? What's happening?
Actually, well, I mean, that is, of course, intrusive. I wouldn't say personal,
Fair point.
right?
Fair.
They do it all day long.
But basically, when a dynamic is empirically one-sided,
Mhm.
the ability for it to be actually codependent is, you know.
Well, it was funny because I did telehealth too, and the one time, like, I could, she must have been like working from home or something, and her cat just like, which if you have a cat and you're working from home, like at some point your cat's jumping up in front of
First
the
thing they do is come.
yeah, and so like her cat like jumped up and she was like, oh, she's like, I'm so sorry. This is actually the first time that he's ever done this. She's like, he must really like you.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm so sorry. And she's like, well, now you know I have a cat. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't even know she had pets, man. Like, but it was so funny. She's like, wow, I'm so sorry. Because at that point, Teddy, was alive and he'd always be jumping. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, she's like, it's fine. I love pets, I love animals or whatever. But it was like when I say like, and I was telling at your house, I was like, but I know I have a good therapist too, because I don't know anything about her and I
Yeah.
shouldn't. And I think even when I do like the mental health first aid training, I try to explain to people when you're doing the mental health first aid, right, that it feels like it should be natural to say, oh, well, when my dad died, I know that I did this, this, and this, because it feels like you're being helpful if you give your own experiences.
Mhm.
And it just it couldn't be farther from the truth. Like, if you're a good therapist, I shouldn't know anything about you because I'm here about
let me share
Let's talk
something
about me.
that's an actually so
I was just going to
I
say that the therapist
was
not the
going to
focal
interject
point. You're the focal point. Like
yes.
that's the
The
point,
only
right?
time, so as a younger therapist, nothing, right? I shared nothing. And if I was going to share something that I felt was relatable to the client that might be helpful, I'd depersonalize it and pretend it was someone else. But I would drive home feeling disingenuine. And I'm like, that doesn't feel right. It was helpful for them, but I'm a liar, so that didn't feel right.
That's a
But
tad harsh, but okay.
but no, but that's how I felt. And And so what was interesting, being out of direct service for 10 years and doing basically training and behavioral statistical stuff, when I went into this position now, oh my goodness, that's 3 years now, Erin, already. Isn't that so
Oh my
crazy now?
goodness.
And I walked in and I'm like, how do I find the balance? Because I'm a firm believer that any extreme does not serve you well, right? So how I found that balance, and it worked for me beautifully, was, again, and Erin, you just nailed it. It's not, I remember when my mom died. It's not that. It's literally statements like, I get you. Mine's gone too. So let's talk about what that looks like clinically, like how you process grief, and then like the nitty-gritty stuff of what it looks like. That's different, right? Or the concept of sharing, and that was a really hard thing for me to do, but I wanted to become a better therapist. I wanted, at a different demographic, I had people that were actually pretty healthy that needed me, they needed to see me a little bit. And I've been working with people that were so mentally ill, it needed to not be about me at all. I just needed to teach skill set, and I needed to help them understand what was going, in psychoeducation, help them understand what was going on with them. But these people are like,
Yeah.
I'm a colonel. I'm told I shouldn't talk to people like you. I'm like, oh, I have to make myself somewhat relatable. or it's
Relatable.
Not
yeah.
happening. And I found a really nice balance, but you can do that too. And I've said this before, I preach this all the time. No matter what comes out of my mouth, if my intention is to serve them, it seems like it's always okay. If my intention is somewhat selfish or has got some little twingy insecurity thing or something, it's just all effed up. So then your goal as a therapist is to be, before you even speak, just like you teach to your clients, what is my intention behind this statement? Now, I don't have to do that like I used to when I was younger, because I used to want to be the savior, well, if I say this thing, then you're going to be saved and I'm going to feel so good, But now,
Therapist.
right? But I think there is a balance, and it's so important and there's, in my initial approach was exactly that. I didn't want my clients to get too much information about me where they might want to latch on and caretake me, right? And a lot of therapists work really hard not to do that, because when they work with high functioning clients, if you share just a little bit of something that needs some help, they'll be like, oh, I have solutions, and they'll do that. So she read you perfectly, because you'd go into fix it mode and a hot minute, you'd be like, you have a cat? Let me tell you about this litter. This litter's great.
Right.
Yeah.
To be honest with you though, too, I respected her so much that I wouldn't have even crossed that too. But now, and well, did such a good job. I probably wouldn't have even naturally done that either. So damn good. I did want to, can you hold on a second? He's got a pillow. He shouldn't
Oh
have that.
my goodness, get that pillow away from him. It's
Haley.
going to be destroyed.
So our dog Pip, we used to have a stuffed animal of St. Francis of Assisi. Don't ask, but he would. We did, and he
Did
would
not expect that.
and run around the house, and I'd be like, "Not St. Francis, no St. Francis."
He's in like full blown puppy mode right now. Okay,
Yeah.
I am. I had just wanted to say too that there was two really, really helpful things for me that she taught me.
Yeah.
When I would be in my throes of insecurity moments that I think would continually affect me in a negative way in my relationships, because especially with just from feeling so insecure from, whether it was, childhood stuff to all of these, abusive relationships, whatever. I just always would feel this deep-seated insecurity. And then that would lead to, feelings of jealousy, and then what would happen is that my brain would just constantly manifest these scenarios. And then they would spiral out of control. And then what would happen is, instead of me communicating effectively what I was really thinking, I would then act out. And so say I see somebody on their phone and I might thinking, oh, well, I wonder what they're doing on their phone. Are they messaging somebody on Facebook? I'm sure that they're cheating on me. I'm sure she's cheating on me because everybody cheats on me because I'm not worth anything. Blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden, like, who are you talking to on your phone? It's like, I'm actually just texting my mom. You know what I mean? And so I sound completely irrational, but I've been creating a whole scenario in my mind for 28 minutes.
Yeah.
So it was like, I need to stop that because I sound like a psycho. And I need to but it's like, and not to use that term, that's
We know what you mean.
language, but I needed to stop that spiral because I would constantly spiral to the point where it would keep me up at night.
Yeah.
And so she gave me this, and so the script itself is awkward. But I tell my partners, listen, I'm going to say this because this helps me. And I don't know what else to tell you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is what helps me from spiraling, and it helps you then in the end. So what I'll do is I say the narrative that I'm telling myself is, and it'll be like, when I see you on your phone, I assume that you're cheating on me. Right? Like, we're gonna pull the feeling, there is a scenario of insecurity. And the reassurance I need from you is, and then I tell them what I need.
Yeah.
Now, if it's something that's completely like, hopefully it's something reasonable, right? Like, and the reassurance I need from you is you need to throw your phone away and completely not use social media.
Right.
Obviously, that's not practical. But sometimes, and I look at it this way, if my partner really cares about me and wants me to feel secure, then they're gonna be like, most times they're like, I didn't even know you felt that way. Like, all I'm seeing is the act out stage of where you're acting irrational and jealous. But really it's like, I'm feeling insecure. Like, I have to be willing to be vulnerable. And the only way that I can do this is stick to this little script that she gave me. But I can't tell you how many times I've done this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, okay, because I can feel myself getting that like anxiety where I'm like, okay, all right, I know I'm about to be irrational. Stick to the script, Erin. I'm like, all right, the narrative I'm telling myself is that you're doing something inappropriate on your phone, and the reassurance I need from you is that you love me and that you would never do anything to hurt me.
Yep.
And then they're like, okay, oh, all right, no. And you know what I mean? And so it's like, and then I stop the thought pattern and I stopped my spiral, and then I'm just like, okay, I can breathe again. So that is one of the biggest things I think that she taught me, was just stopping the spiral, because that was such a huge cause for me. And it's not like it's reestablished my self-esteem or like, oh, I'm like but it allowed me to communicate more effectively. And it also told my partner what I needed.
Yes.
All in one.
Two things.
Like, it was
Communicate more
like,
effectively. Yep. And then it becomes very clear, if you're asking for small needs and you have a partner that can't deliver that, then it becomes very clear about what the relationship is.
exactly. So for me, it was like, it did so many things. They'd be like, well, why are, however that went, it was like, if you can't just do a simple thing for me when I'm telling you I'm being vulnerable and saying I feel insecure or whatever the case may be, then right, like, we need to revisit this whole relationship. But I have found that it has been really effective when I'm willing to be like,
for weeding people out. And you can use that in friendships. You can use that in anything, that clarification. But it forces you, which I commend you on, Erin, because it forces you have to take the vulnerable step.
Yes.
You have to come forward and go, I'm scared. I need your reassurance, whatever the narrative is.
Right.
And then the person has to say, I feel your fear and it's okay. But you're the one who has to show the vulnerability. So what that tells you too is if the other person can't validate that fear and give you comfort, then you don't need it.
Yeah, I mean, it was super scary at first, but then I saw the end result of it and I'm like, oh, I'm not spiraling for 2 days. Like, this is wonderful. And to turn out that I had no idea you were feeling that way. And
I know.
Like,
and I think and Ellen, we were talking about last week about the hard shell and the level of struggling with vulnerability. And I was funny because I'm talking about this, and Erin's shell was not hard. It was a different shell. It was just as hard. But I know you're not at that place yet where you would be ready to be like, look at her face. But boy, when you get into those moments that go, I'm afraid, I need information and I need validation here, it changes everything. Yeah.
Well,
And
you
I
know,
know,
too, and also, I'm sorry, Erin. Like,
oh, go.
you said like, this is my script and this is what I have to do. And everybody, everybody has their little thing. Like for you, it was seeing somebody on their phone.
Yeah.
Somebody else, it could be, why has he been outside mowing the lawn for so long? Because it's a trigger. There's something that happened in the past that was involved with that very thing. And I'm here to say that everybody has them, right? Like, why is she going to the gym 5 days a week when she wasn't going to the gym at all before? Something's going on. And it all comes from past experience.
Right.
It all comes from past experience. And like Katie, I told you, I said like mine is inconsistent communication and the breakdown.
Yeah.
That's mine. And when I see it, I either call it out in a not so gentle way, or I say, done with this. That's all comes down to like, what you're going to tolerate, what you're not going to tolerate, what's good for me, what's not good for me. This is a flag for me. You know, and sometimes you can't get past it. And the person's like, no, that's not what's happening. That's not what's happening. And you're like, you know what? Yeah, can't. If you can't give me like, if you can't sit down and give me the reassurance, because some people are not communicators, as we know,
But you
and they
can
may
give them,
say,
but it's a request. They don't have to be communicators. It's an easy request.
Right.
If you say, hi, I'm sad and scared. You are my partner. Tell me I should not be sad and scared. And you're lovely. I mean, it's like little kids, really. Mama, I miss you.
little
Jack,
kids.
Jack today, he was texting me because I was gone. I've been so busy and I was working. And he just texted me, hi, Mama. And I came home and I was so busy. I couldn't, I come back and I looked at him and I said, you miss me? And he said, yeah. And he's 16. I said, honey, I love you. Everything's fine. I've just been really busy, but he's like, I thought you were mad or something, but that kind of really simple. I miss you. I'm scared. I love, one of my favorite books is everything I ever needed to learn. I learned in kindergarten.
Kindergarten.
Yeah.
It's true.
Right.
Yeah.
Just foundational. Well, so just because I know we're like done, but that
Yeah.
reminds me, the second most important thing that she taught me was, what's the worst that can happen? Which is another fundamental thing to ask myself, because I would be like buying people's love and, buying all these gifts and doing all these things because I felt like if I wasn't, like I wouldn't be a good girlfriend or something. And she's like, okay, I hear that, but next time when you go to buy tickets to a game or you go to buy a sweater for someone, ask yourself, what's the worst that can happen if you don't? You're a bad girlfriend? And I'm like, yeah, okay. She's like, so you have to buy things to be a good girlfriend? And I'm like, no, I don't. And even going back to like COVID stuff, right? Everybody, there was so much fear around everything, but it's like, even if, because it was about what I can control and what I can't control. So you just have to keep asking yourself, like, what is the worst that can happen and what can I control?
Yeah, and what brings you,
Control
everything.
doing, yes, and what are you doing out of joy as opposed to out of fear? So if you're buying stuff out of fear, people feel that. Speaking of COVID, so I did a lot of stuff during COVID that was not out of fear. I just sent people random Barbie doll parts and stuff. I just did weird stuff.
I know I still have it with the chicken.
I sent
chicken
people
body.
wigs with bangs on them.
Still got
and
those.
for me, it had nothing to do with fear. I was bored and I love my people. So I'm just going to do
that
weird
was out
stuff.
of pure joy. That was out of pure joy. I felt
pure joy.
I felt
and
that.
Look at Ellen's face.
I'm just kind of wondering what was Barbie doll part. I mean, whatever, man.
I
Like,
have a whole bunch
about
more now because my friends find them for me because they know I do stuff with them. I ran out during COVID. Now I got more. Y'all better watch out.
And the best thing was there'd be no prep, no setup. You just be like, oh, that's weird. I got a package, and you're kind of sketched out a little bit. And then I'm like, oh, it's from Miller. I know. Open it up, and it's just a weird, creepy, like Barbie head with a chicken body. I don't even know. No note.
no, with cut
And
out
I'm like,
letters,
no,
with
it was like, I'm your little
newspaper
COVID friend. There was like, I'm your little COVID friend.
COVID friend. And I'm like, what the? I'm like,
COVID
maybe
Valentine's.
Yeah, kinda.
Whoa. Hey, man.
And
That's
then when I
crazy.
realized
I
I
get
could
it.
send stuff through Amazon to everybody, it got crazy. Yeah.
No, but you're totally right. It's like, where from what place am I sending this from? Because I think that's really what matters. Even if
Is
it's
Ellen ready to be on this list? Do you think
I
she's
think
ready?
she is. I think she is for
The
sure.
Barbie doll part. It's a little fucked
Oh
up.
my
but
gosh,
mean,
I
like,
have a
I'll
whole
give it.
other case. All right, I love you guys. I gotta go. I gotta do the dinners and the stuff.
Love you
I
too.
think we should have another, Erin, would you come back again?
I mean, I don't have anything else going on. So let me check my schedule. Yes.
To preempt the sex episode. That's
Yeah,
okay.
I think
really
we should.
gotta
I
build
think
up to that
that's
one. We gotta
exactly where I
build up.
think Erin should join us, because we were gonna talk about that. And I think we should all talk a little bit about the angle we want to take that, because that could go all over the places. But we wanted to talk relationships, manipulative relationships, and how sex plays into that, and how do you heal from that, and all of that stuff too.
Plus, sex is great. So that's another reason we
Well,
just want
what's it?
Yeah.
Oh, it made me think of a song.
goes without saying.
I think I wrote it. Sex is great. It's never, nope, that's not it. Goodbye.
I
I'll have to remember it. It was a little jingle I wrote.
nailed it, pun intended.
Oh, bye,
Holy
guys.
shit. Okay, that's it. We're done.
I can't. Okay.